is say that the reason that we need to take climate action is so that we won't be dependent on foreigners for our energy. And I would say 90% of the people in the room looked at me like, I don't understand what you just said. Like, what's the problem with saying we don't want to be dependent on foreigners? And then I said, think about our town. Think about our public schools in our town. How many of the students are Latino now? Think about the people in our community. Think about the trailer parks in our community. Who lives there? Now you can make a decision. Do you want those people to be part of our movement or not? I mean, I don't care about your ideology or your politics. Do you want to win? If you do, then we're not going to talk about how the problem is foreigners, because none of those people are going to come to our meetings if you do that.
We talked about that around the language of
Can you speak up?
we talked about that around the language around undocumented workers versus illegal or alien, and in the same way how that affects people's feeling about the words.
Did you have a second question too?
I did. So the second one is, do you have tips on coordinating letter to the editor writing workshops? I'm planning to host one later this month. So we're looking at best practices and advice for supporting first-time writers while also helping seasoned writers tackle new topics in their letters. I asked that because you mentioned that was an event.
One of the things that we've done a couple times is when people are just starting to do letters to the editor, I'll make it a group process. So have people come together and make sure that that there's a second set of eyes or somebody who can also edit their letters. But we also we've done a couple workshops where we take letters that and kind of dissect them. Letters that maybe they might be letters that we agree with, everything that they say, but they might actually be pushing away a lot of the people that we could get. So an example would be like a letter on climate change that talks about how horrible the Republicans are because they're ruining everything on climate change, and they're so stupid because they don't believe in climate change. And so which, many people in the group might believe that and might say, yeah, go get them. But we'll take some example letters and then break it down together, and also look at a letter that's in line with these principles that we talked about, so that people can see the difference.
Okay.
And then we help them. And then if they do a draft, then we make sure there's somebody there who can edit and talk through the changes. So that it becomes a collective process, and people know that if they're going to send a letter in, it's good practice to get a second set of eyes on it and make sure that it's in line with the strategy and that they're actually the best person to send that letter in, and they might not be. And then being okay with maybe somebody else is a better spokesperson to send in a letter to the editor on that topic.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's kind of a basic question. Should we call it climate change or global warming? I've heard that the term climate change came out of the other's bag of tricks. I don't know that's a fact, but I want to know the truth.
What do you think? We say climate change usually, but
Climate weirding.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't take much time on it because it's not really a workshop about that. But most groups have changed to talking about climate change because the temperatures go up year and every year, up and down. This year we had a lot of snow. Last year we didn't. Different regions are affected in different ways. Some are getting worse storms. Some are getting drought. So it's not really just about global warming as it's experienced by local residents. But that's another topic.
Sarah,
Okay.
I was actually just going to piggyback on her last question and talking about the letter to the editor process, because I was able to attend one here locally, and one thing that we had different tables for people to sit at, and we just made sure that there were kind of experienced. Sorry. We just
You
made
also,
sure.
let's just get to the habit, especially if this is the first time you've stood up, just to say your name and where you're from.
Sarah Spante, I'm from here in Ashland, and I was able to go to one of the letter writing events that Hannah helped to organize, and we had different tables of people, and we just made sure that there were like experienced, knowledgeable people sitting at each of those tables to help whoever was around and maybe new. So, and that was really nice.
Jeff?
Could I have like a minute and a half to talk about seeking common ground? Do you have time for that? Yeah. So I really like the presentation, first of all. Thank you. You packed a lot in a short period. My name's Jeff. I'm from here in Ashland, and the last 15 years, a lot of my focus has been trying to build common ground nationally with the Transpartisan Alliance, and there's a lot local going on. And I stay attached to that because it is such a fascinating mix of potential and promise and breakthrough and frustration. And I can talk, love to talk about this, and I won't right now, but I want to put one thing on the table, and it had to do with your slide. I think it's principle number 2. We had 2 lines, and there's a tactic that says, let's bring people all the way over to us, and another that says, let's just go over to where we are, and we got to go to the middle. And it took about 10 years to figure this out. And it's what the biggest challenge of this is, in my opinion. It's pretty subtle, and it really takes some kind of subtle, reflective work. You know, the people, I'm going to say on the right, although I think right-left, I think that language is a big part of our problem. But I'll say right now, you know what I mean when I say people on the right. Culturally, and for a number of reasons, they are harder to get to the table than people on the left. We're more comfortable with that kind of thing than they are. And as a generalization, they're really suspicious about what our motives are in building common ground. And they think, you know, I've been in places in this county where they say, well, don't let the Ashlanders start by anything holding hands or a moment of quiet or reflection. That's all kumbaya stuff, and black magic, and don't trust it. But there's people who suspect it in a more sophisticated way. And I realized this when, at one of our sessions, somebody asked us to really think hard about why we want to do this work, this common ground work. And if you ask people on the left, they'll often get really kind of abstract and say, well, I want more civil dialogue, and I want more connection, and I'm upset about all the vitriol and all of that. And then you ask them to go a little deeper, and I'll speak personally. When I went deeper, what I realized was, yeah, I'd like better civil dialogue, all that. But really, I think our answers and policies are better than theirs. And the reason I'm in that room and keep going back, and we've met for 3 years, one Saturday morning a month at the Medford Library with a group of Ashland progressives and a group of Tea Partiers trying to build that relationship. And the reason that I kept coming back was I felt, really when I was honest, that if I could build those relationships, I could persuade them to my point of view because it's better than their point of view. And you know what? They get that. So when they're suspicious about why we're asking them to the table, they have some reason to be. And this is a long way of saying, let's get real honest with ourselves with why we are trying to reach common ground. I suspect it's less about the abstraction of building better civil dialogue than about persuading people to our point of view. And we're not going to fool them about that. And after a long time of doing this, I really came to the conclusion that energy, that, we don't say to them, our ideas are better than yours. But if that energy comes out, it defeats what we're trying to do.
So Jeff, I want to make sure people have a chance to ask questions,
Yeah.
but maybe if you'll be around
Happy
afterwards.
to talk more about that if you'd like.
Great. Are there any other questions? Yeah, and I saw your hand was up earlier.
Oh, I just had a really short question.
Okay, and then I'll get to you.
About Emma kind of false. About the letter writing, when you do those kind of group sessions, do you then stagger them? Like, you send yours in 1 week, and you send in yours in 2 weeks, like that? And then how many do you get in?
I think it just depends. I think every newspaper is also different. Like, in our newspaper, until the last election, when they were getting a lot of letters and the paper was being especially picky about which letters they published at which time, our letters always get in. So I think that especially in rural communities, like, there's lots of room for letters. So I think if you stagger them, that's great. And sometimes the newspaper will do that on its own. Do you have anything else to say about that?
No.
And do you need a personal relationship with the editor, or do you just know?
No, you just send them in. I think there and then.
I'm Trish from Phoenix.
First, I just want to say I recently went to the climate march and I was incredibly impressed by the diversity of the crowd and the presentations. I also participated in the art meet, which I felt was a community stimulating thing, as well as your messaging component. It was key, and I would like to see more of that. I also want to know if Jessica's going to have your screens that we can also get. Okay.
I have it, I will
Thank you.
share it.
Yeah. There's somebody in the back and then, okay.
I wanted to know if we're going to get these slides.
Oh, okay, cool, yeah.
Lisa Flexner from Ben.
In a different state.
And I'll stay standing. I had a recent conversation with a friend who is a former state senator in Minnesota. And this goes to the explaining why our opponents act and what we're for. He likes the idea of political jujitsu. So when your opponent comes at you with a negative about you, you take that and spin it into a positive. So any weakness is also an opportunity for strength. We just have to find the right language to do it. And say, so for instance, in the school board campaign that we're running right now in Bend, and there were just articles all over the state about how much money is going into these school board elections. It's like a $10,000 school board election. It's kind of ridiculous right now. Two of our progressive candidates got endorsed by the Education Association and the Teachers Union and got significant money for that. And their opponents are saying, well, they're getting that money for because the teachers they're going to be voting on the contracts, and the teachers want good contracts, so they donated to get candidates who will vote for good contracts. And we spun that in an article that came out this morning in the Bulletin to say, no, we got that money because for the first time the teachers felt like they were part of a conversation, and they haven't felt that way previously in conversations with the incumbent. So this is an example of the teachers being brought to the table as part of our conversation. And that was that political jujitsu, because they're trying to slam it as, oh no, now they're beholden to the teachers union. So there are opportunities within these principles and strategies to reframe the discussion on a regular basis, as long as that messaging is strong, solid, and consistent.
Bravo.
Okay. Can we please give Hannah